So this is episode 11 out of 12 of a webinar series that Outlaw Social, my business, a marketing agency in Edinburgh, has been running. Right at the start of lockdown, we decided that we wanted to run a kind of marketing masterclass to support businesses, business owners, marketers, to equip themselves with the skills that they need to, I guess, to thrive through the kind of pandemic and into the rest of 2020 and beyond. We've covered everything from copywriting to business model canvas, ads, Google Analytics. We've crammed quite a lot into 11 sessions so far. I think, Neil, you've been at most of them.
So yeah, very good, really good.
Good, nice one. Today's session, we're speaking about really how to grow your network and focused around how to run events for your business. And that may be physical or virtual events, or also as a lead generation tool to grow your business as well. And then we'll be talking a little bit about LinkedIn as a platform and a tool to grow your business and your personal brand as well. The two speakers, we were meant to have Helen Pritchard joining us, but unfortunately she's had to pull out this morning. She's got something else going on. But we're joined by Bruce Walker, who is the CEO of FutureX and a good friend of mine's. And I think, Bruce, we'll just start. If you'd like to introduce yourself, create a bit of context for everyone on the call.
Sure. Thanks so much for having me, Lee. Nice to meet you all this morning. My name's Bruce. I am the co-founder and CEO of FutureX, and we're on a mission to what we call empower the purposeful. So we believe that the world, business, society needs more purpose-led approach to doing business, because businesses have such a massive knock-on and ripple effect, not just on the products and services that they produce, but that the people they employ, the communities that they exist in. And so when you start to help businesses become more purpose-driven and associated to the why they're doing what they do, then all the indicators also suggest that makes you a much more economically successful and robust and stable as an organization as well. So our work is that we have a online platform called FutureX Plus, where we have members from all over the world join us. We host big international summits, which up before this year were all physical events, and they're now all digital events, responding to the situation that we're in. But the history is, and actually how Lee and I met, I think, maybe nearly 7, 8 years ago, maybe, Lee, is when the Startup Summit in Edinburgh was this event which was about encouraging a new boom in entrepreneurship and startups from a context that was different from what we were seeing already in the business space. And so we started that event. It started in 2012, and from that event we went on to host summits and programs in San Francisco, in LA, in Chicago, New York, Berlin, Abu Dhabi, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, London, and across Scotland. So we've literally now hosted physical events. We've run programs where we connect founders across the world. But then more recently, we've had to transition all that onto an online space, which has got lots of opportunities to it. But then also there's some inevitable downsides of not being able to get everyone together. But we're pretty excited for the future.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. Can you just take us back to that first event that you ran? I think I'm quite interested to just, just hear the story of how it went, what you done wrong and what you done right. That would be quite good to understand.
So the first event that we hosted in Edinburgh, I had no idea about how to run an event. So I am at that time, literally no experience whatsoever. So I was doing my very best just to try and piece things together. But what we knew is that we wanted to do things differently, and we wanted to change the format primarily. So at that time, in about 2011, 2012, the events that we saw were primarily pretty old-fashioned, I would say. There was one particular demographic that dominated the stages. They tended to speak for long periods of time, and the general feeling was that you were leaving having heard a great story, but not sure about how you personally implement that into your journey. And so our mission was, well, what if we could put all the resources that a business needs in one space? So that's the kind of the lawyers, accountants, banks, grants, funders, advisors, whoever it might be. And then all the inspirational figures, but people at all different levels, up and down, from very early, a couple of weeks into the journey, all the way through to those people that had an exit, because we recognize that people come at different stages, and there's not much use in just hearing, the billionaire story, exit story all the time. You want to hear the kind of messy part in between. So some of the challenges early on was convincing anyone to care about us, and I think that was a big thing. So inviting speakers when you've got no reputation, there's nothing really intrinsically in it for them in that moment, and so that was something we had to battle through. How we overcame that, though, was to really focus on why we were doing it, and it can't be you're doing it for money, or it can't be because you want my business to be more successful. It has to be because you have a purpose in mind. And so for us, we wanted to create a new entrepreneurial boom and inspire and connect people. So we led with that, and we really just asked people simple asks to begin with. Can you help us? Can you give us a bit of time? Will you spend a few minutes speaking with me? And just to get them on the hook. And that's really how we got started. I then used lots of connections and asked people for lots of help, and that enabled us to get a bit of sponsorship, and then momentum started building. But it was a lot of project the vision and then hope that people start to show up behind you and believe that you're going to do it. So there's a lot of saying that we're just going to do it, and whatever happens on the 22nd of November or whatever date it was, whoever shows up, and then you have to just take it from there and build. But it ended up working. I think we ended up having 400 or 500 people there that year.
Amazing. Thanks for that. I think that's really useful in just providing a bit of context. And probably to kind of expand that context, if we could skip forward to the past few years, maybe just chat us through your most successful event or your favorite event, and just paint a picture of how that went and what it looked like and what guest speakers you had, and that would be quite useful.
Sure. So a few weeks ago, we hosted the Impact Summit, and that was a complete transformation to where we'd been before, because that was all done digitally. And it's hard to pick a favorite event, because we hosted events historically in places like LA and New York, and I can tell you that they're my favorite. And they're my favorite for lots and lots of reasons. But in terms of probably the most successful event that we put on, even just a few weeks ago, I was pretty proud because we ended up having over 100. We had over 600 attendees, 100 different cities, 22 different countries, in a way that they could never have participated that way before, because they would have had to have come physically to Glasgow to experience the event, whereas they could do it from their own homes. That for us was kind of thinking again about, if we want to lead our industry, then we need to be bold in talking about the topics we think that are going to shape the industry and shape the future of business. And so that's really what the Impact Summit was about, is saying how these are the issues we care about, and we want to make sure that we are like a thought leader in that space. And we don't necessarily need to be the experts ourselves. What we are is curating those people who know, and there's an element of by association, then people recognize that FutureX are a reliable source for this type of support. And again, I think if you link it towards a real mission and purpose, and then we would theme it as well. So we'd go to people with really focused themes and say, look, we think you're an expert in this space. Can you join us? And that's how we start to build up the momentum. in terms of events are so multifaceted. It really depends on whether you're wanting to host a small event and what's the purpose of that, or if you're looking to host big kind of conference style events, which are so multi-layered and there's lots of different kind of components to think about.
Sure, amazing, thanks. I think because we've got quite a small group on the call, it would be quite good to help us steer the conversation. Whether you guys can maybe write your answers in the chat box, or feel free just to unmute yourself and pitch in. But it would be good to understand on the call who we've got in terms of how you might use an event. So are events sort of central to your business model, or are you looking to potentially consider events as a way to generate leads or build authority in your industry? Feel free to just give us a bit of context, a line in the chat, or unmute yourself and jump in and maybe give us an example. That would be useful, guys.
So for me, just very briefly, right now it would be around lead generation. By the way, Bruce, I think that is a tremendous name. FutureX, absolutely tremendous name. Very clever. In the past, I've got broad-based marketing experience, but quite a lot of events, from unveiling, working with the minister to organise the government's international strategy launch. Worked on a lot of corporate things. I worked in the MTV Awards, so I've got, and also business awards and so on. So also quite a few royal visits with all the security protocols. So I've done quite a few events, but moving forward, that would be in demand generation. And I think the fact you've got this excellent, name, you're able to really think about purpose and really, take that theme and also move international events online. That's really, really incredible. I'm really looking forward to hearing more.
Thanks, Dale.
Perfect. Thank you. Anyone else?
I think following you there, Lee, for us it's a kind of lead gen, but also to build your authority, show your kind of trusted expert status. But primarily, yeah, if you're going to put on an event, there's a lot of time and money goes into it, so you're going to want to see some form of potential revenue off the back of it down the line, obviously, in a lead gen perspective. So that would be the prime reason for us.
Perfect. Cool. Well, what?
I'm a bit random. I don't have a business. So I am here because I work at CME, so that's a mental health program to challenge stigma and discrimination. So we're doing a lot of work online. So we're a social contact-based model where we use people's lived experience. I manage volunteers and spreading communities of change. So we're looking at how do we use how do we change our volunteer model online, and we're using events to do that. And things work really well for us. During Mental Health Awareness Week around Facebook live streaming, we're working with like Eden Communities Project around doing the big lunch online, different stuff like that. So I'm really interested in that side of things and expanding networks around that, where networks for change. And how do we do that after events? I think is a really cool space to be a part of. Also, so that's my professional hat just now. I'm interested in doing freelance volunteering and maybe going into consultancy work around this, because I have a lot of expertise. My background's in equality and diversity and inclusion, and also doing a lot of creative engagement. And what I feel is missing, well, also just because like everyone wants to give back right now, right? And I know loads of stuff about this. So I was interested in, so you've been running these online events, but had you considered accessibility around these events, how to involve hard to reach audiences, stuff like that. So I guess maybe that's something which you might want to use me for. Is that something which people have considered? Because we know that diverse communities are a massive way to expand our reach, who's not in the room, right? So that could be something which I'm really interested in. Best practice around accessibility guidelines, whether that exists yet or whether I could provide that for people. And then interested in what could I offer people around an event space, and how would I do that?
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Lynn. I think there's loads of great input there that can help steer the conversation. Bruce, what I was going to kind of move on to next is kind of framing how, so a lot of businesses and people on this call might be thinking about, or people that listen after as well, might be thinking about pivoting and considering if they can run virtual events or even physical events as a way to generate leads, build their authority, build their networks. Can we maybe get your input just on like advice on how to run that first event and what you would think about before you do that in terms of, I guess, the purpose, the objective of running an event? It would be good to get some input on that.
Sure. So I think I'll talk about like online events because that's the context we're all going to be in for the foreseeable. I think that, again, you have to think about what's the purpose of it. I mean, what's the purpose for the audience as well as what's the purpose for you? So you really need to think deeply as to what value are you adding to that community. And in terms of actually setting it up, the way we went about it is deeply considering what are all the aspects of a physical event that people get value from, and how do, where possible, do we replicate that? And one of the things that we've noticed from running online events is that people's behavior on an online event is actually pretty similar to the way they behave at a physical event. You know, people warm up to asking questions, people need a bit of a prompt, discussions often still need to be facilitated. You know, it takes time for people to build up throughout the day. So you still need to think about all those different components. You know, how do you break the ice? How do you make sure that you stay focused? And I would argue that through online, you need to be even more focused because, you know, we're all just potentially distracted by what's going on in our homes and what other notifications might pop up on our screens. So you do need to be very considerate that the way people's attention spans have changed as well. So thinking about that in terms of how you're structuring the content. The other thing is, you know, you also want to think about like topics for content and making sure that it is something that is going to capture people's attention. So, you know, it's kind of thinking about headline topics for the subjects you want to cover and make sure that it's accessible for people and make sure that it's exciting enough for people. So, you know, we had a talk the other day at the Impact Summit that was talking about a social entrepreneur going from 2 users to 2 million users. Everyone signed up for that. I wonder why. It was a really practical session on her story of how she went from here to there. And I think sometimes content that's too fluffy will lose its place just now when there's so much available content online. So much is free. People want to get something that's quite focused and valuable. So I would definitely consider that. I think when you look at, like if you're doing this for lead generation, one of the things that you want to be very considerate of is what information do you gather from your attendees? What information do you gather in advance? What questions do you want to ask them? No one likes an overly onerous registration form, so you may want to be considerate for how you ask the questions and when you ask the questions, because if you actually phase how you ask questions leading up to the event, it's easy for people to maybe answer 2 or 3 questions at a time. So when they first register, just before the event and then after the event, and it makes it easy, and your job all the time is to make it easy for people to provide you with insight. And so some simple questions that you can then use for hopefully either the next, for understanding who these people are, what their needs are, and whether they learned anything. So you can use that as the kind of content justification, the case studies for when you do it next. I would say that...
Can I link into that? We ran Facebook live stream events. Only like it's live streaming. Which, by the way, have you guys found like American churches are a great resource online on YouTube for running events? They know how to reach people. I've followed so many US churches. So how you can live stream, you record a Zoom, then you live stream it on Facebook, right? And a weird thing was, we have evaluation partners, and like, how do you track impact? That's obviously ultimately what we're trying to do, rather than just, you know, urinate into the wind. But so for that, we found that surveys actually did work. It was really bizarre. So I was like, come on now, it's a Facebook event. This is going to be really weird. So we were the same, like we were encouraging people to chat. We were doing, say, for example, a poetry event. People were talking about poetry and performing poetry and how do we use it to create social change. So we thought by using discussion in the chat, people would be responding to it and we could monitor the chat. Nobody was wanting to do that. They were just responding with emojis. Whereas we had a survey link in the event and people were willing to take, like 30 people were willing to take time to say, hey, like over 50% of people were people that hadn't engaged before in our events and saying what they liked, what they didn't like. So that totally challenged my perceptions that nobody's going to take time to do, and it was like a 15-question survey. So that was just a bit of insight from my experience doing that.
And I think that
I wanted to pick you up on a point, if that's all right.
Sure.
Mentioned, right, replicating stuff online, right? But do you not think, are you meaning what is valuable, finding what that point is, and then what's the different way to do it online? Because like, so I'm training to be a therapist, and like, basically what they've done, my background's also in accessible and blended learning. And if you just dump content on a 9-to-5 Zoom, everybody's like, this isn't how it works anymore. And you've seen all the stuff on Zoom fatigue, right? So I think you need to work out the why. What are people getting from it? Like you say, if it's connecting with people, if it's take-home resources, but it's not just saying, hey, we're having a conference 9 to 5. Let's register and have coffee 9 till 10. Let's do a thing 10 till 11. Like, so am I right in saying that's what you mean by replicating it online, not the agenda the same as online?
Yeah, so what I mean is like replicating the sources of value that you get at a physical event online. So it's like, it's the meaningful connections, it's the communications with each other, it's that kind of spark of learning that you didn't expect to get, how you get that. And actually online, you can be much more responsive because for us, for example, is we had a mixture of some live content, but also some pre-recorded content, which just from a technical point of view, it guarantees no technical failures on the day because you have done at least a chunk of it has already been done and reviewed. But then bringing a live element to it, so a live Q&A, for example, or some people did their keynotes live on the day as well. So that kind of blend gives you the time to also prepare, it could be prepare surveys to send out immediately or during the talk. It could be that for us, we had like some perks for signing up to certain talks because the speakers wanted to give, things away. So we had one of the founders of Tony Chocolonely, was a chocolate brand, and there was like a prize draw, and he would send you a massive box of chocolate in the post. So there are things you can also do where speakers want to show off their products and their services, and so that can be a way to draw people in, but also incentivize people to stay and watch the whole talk, which is the other thing. We know it's easy just to dip in and dip out, and I'll watch a bit of that, then I'll stop. So you need to think about how do you capture and keep people's attention during that time as well. And what I was just going to say before is just that think about brand association, because it's not just about your ability to market, it's about using brands who also have marketing capability to help push the message out to them. And again, it's that association that you're with them, they reach out to their community. And then equally with like what we do is we have lots of kind of ecosystem partners. So people who are also part of the industry and care about us solving the problem that we're trying to solve. And they're more than happy to help amplify the event as well, because they're mission driven and they care about solving the mission. And it just means that we're now able to tap into their networks, and the network effect starts to amplify far, far beyond just whatever small, actually, community that we have. It's working with brand partners to reach out to a much, much bigger network.
Perfect. Bruce, can I just dig in a little bit into the kind of topics or the titles of online events, and from a kind of business perspective, how to drive signups? Because I think currently you're right, people are like, there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of Zoom fatigue, and how can people listening to this call start to think about, how do they get people to sign up for their events? That's the $1 million question, really. What tips would you give, and what experience do you have? What's worked? What's not worked?
So it's hard, is what I'll say. It never gets easy. So even for someone like us who've literally had thousands and thousands of attendees flow through our events, it still's not easy. And there's no sitting back and just expecting it to happen. You know, we will do an absolute media for our big events where we need to have hundreds or 1,000-ish people. You know, we make sure we're doing a big media drive to get people there, and we are pretty relentless because we know that people need to see it multiple times in multiple different sources for it to register for them. So they need to see it on Twitter, they need to see it on LinkedIn, they need to see it in their email inbox, they need to see it multiple times, they need to see people in their network sharing it to just build up that validation. In terms of like talk titles, it became quite fun for us because our events became quite big where talks would clash with each other, so you couldn't physically see all the content in one go, which is another benefit to online because now people can watch replays and recordings and things. But because they were competitive, we needed to think, well, how do we make sure that each stage is always busy? And so it's coming up with like headline titles. Like, you know, if you imagine, we like think we're like in a newspaper and we're trying to come up with the most catchy pun or for the title of the talk. And we work with our speakers to try and find the most exciting headline for their talk and a bit of description. And do you know what you need to do? It's like, I'm trying to avoid using the word, but I'm going to say it's like clickbait. You need to come up with a clickbait title because that's how you capture people's attention. The internet is awash with content. Everyone is fighting for your attention. And so you also, I think, need to employ a similar kind of tactic where you come up with something that's really catchy. And, you know, for Sasha's talk the other day, 2 to 2 million, it's practical. You know, some people come up with great talks, but then they're like, but what will I learn as a result of it? Whereas there's an implied learning from Sasha's talk that you will learn to do what she did. And so I think back to that is that what's the practical nugget people are going to get from it? Because we're all time poor. And so I think you want to try and break down as practically as possible what is the value from participating. And even saying, like, you know, as an event, our outcome is that we hope attendees will have done X, Y, and Z. And then at least the attendee knows in advance that this is an event for me. And also, if it's not an event for them, that's good. That, you know, people can move past that and it reduces that disappointment level. But in a time when everyone's so stretched, I think it's just that clarity is the number one thing I could say.
Absolutely, and I think the same principles that apply to email marketing, for example, if your title subject line isn't punchy enough or clear enough, then the majority of people aren't going to click and aren't going to see the content. So I think the same principles across all areas of marketing apply. And another one is like the funnel. So making sure that it's just like a sales funnel, making sure that people have enough touch points with your event to build enough trust and enough hype and enough demand that they actually sign up. Like, and it's just so, yeah, I think that's really practical advice. The follow-up. So this, again, the same principle applies. If our objective is lead generation for an event or whatever your objective is.
What's lead generation?
So that, I guess that's lead generation is just basically using a tool to generate leads for your business. So running an event, let's just say, for example, this webinar is in a roundabout way a lead generation tool for my business, Outlaw Social. So what I'm doing is I'm providing value to the audience, but in return, most people will likely subscribe to our email list and want to consume more of our content.
Okay.
And then a percentage of those people might become customers in the future.
So basically what you want out of it.
Yeah, so if lead generation is the objective, how, like most of our marketing tactics, it's all in the follow-up. So can you just chat practically, Bruce, about following up and kind of trying to close the loop and reach your objectives?
Sure. So this is a thing that we struggled with for a while, actually, because we were always moving on to the next event, and we were kind of actually our ability to keep people engaged, we would see would wane a little bit. And I suppose before I say that, actually, I really should have said it depends what your objective is. So if your objective is, say, get people to sign up to a mailing list, or if your objective is that you want some practical, you want them to buy other products of yours, or for us, what we eventually realized is that we had this community that was only getting together a couple of times a year at our physical events, and that we were then losing the value of what happened from our events because we weren't in the discussion. They were just going back to their lives and then coming back again at the next event. And so that's why we created FutureX Plus, which is an online subscription community where everyone gets access to our events, but they pay monthly a much lower cost than it would to join every event individually. And that means that they are able to, there's an immediate action for everyone who attends our event. They can join FutureX. If they enjoyed the event, they'll probably want to join Plus because they get access to all the content all year round. And that for us is that's the key step, is what happens next? How do you keep them engaged? Sometimes it is just keeping them in a communication loop so that you're continuing to speak to them. And then when it does become valuable, they can move up the kind of funnel. But yeah, I think that it's having that clear objective in mind and then thinking about how you get them there. I would think that using the content from the event, reusing that again and again, and making that potentially real available for people. And if your event's free, you've got to think, how do they pay for it? So they're either going to pay for it via their email address because you're going to send them marketing information, or they're going to pay for it with some information about who they are in their business. So no event's free, that someone's always paying for it with information of some description. And so you want to think about that too. How are you charging for your events? And then how do you use that to resource your next thing?
Brilliant. And I think it's about removing friction in the follow-up. So really forward planning. So thinking about like what are the milestones and the timelines for our points of communication after an event, and what content do I need for that, and what message are we trying to get across, and what is the objective? So what is the end goal that we're looking to achieve? And really making sure that the content you put out post-event really is familiar and aligns with the content that person consumed during the event and before the event. That will increase conversion rates. It'll just give you a better chance of reaching your objective. Bruce, can we chat about attracting speakers and partners? So I'm talking to the kind of majority of people I think will be watching this afterwards. If people run a business or an organization and are looking to run an event to build a community or to generate leads, how could they use other people's audiences, whether that's partners or speakers, to, I guess, draw in a crowd and potentially cross-share audiences? You want to chat us through that and give us, I think this is a really good point, so hopefully some golden nuggets here for everyone.
Yeah, so that was, I'll write that down so I don't forget as I start speaking. So speakers and other. So getting people just to promote your event is, well, it depends which level of engagement you're looking for, because I reckon that most people will happily, quickly share a social media post about your event to help amplify it a bit. But you need to think about what value are you providing them if they are going to say email their email list. People kind of sometimes will come to us and ask us almost, quite blasé, will you just send an email to all your mailing list? And you're like, well, of course I can't do that, because we have a trusted relationship which they've engaged with, and they expect a certain type of content from us in a certain type of format. So it's not just freely available to send out emails. However, we have very successfully managed to bring on a number of partners who do that very thing for us. They promote it in their newsletter, they promote it on social media. The reason they do that is that our content adds value to their network. That's why. And so we might provide free tickets or discount tickets, or we might even say to that as an organization, employees within that organization, why don't you join and share it with your community so that they get the learning from it. But you're providing something for them, something valuable that they want. And in some cases, they just want association to that type of content, because then they don't have to produce the content. You've produced it for them and their logo's attached to it. And it's a give and take. So for some brands, they'll have to pay to do that, and that's sponsorship. And other kind of network related organizations might do that because they've got a community that they need to serve, and they might be a charity or a non-profit who has a duty to serve those people. So my approach to doing that is email the head of communications or the head of marketing at said organization, and just explain to them what you're doing, and ask them first if you can just chat to them. Don't ask them in the first email if they can promote your event, because that's far too easy just to ignore or delete that email because you've got 101 other things to do and someone's just asked you another thing to do. If you say to them, this is my objective, I'd like to run this style of event for this reason, if you got 10 minutes, I can run it past you. Almost everyone says yes to that. And then once you're speaking to them, you can say, it would be amazing if you could promote what we're doing. And if there's anything you want us to share, we'd be delighted to do that too. And that is the critical component. When we launched the Impact Summit online, I reached out to loads of people. And what I said to them was, if you can help us promote this, this is the first online event that we've hosted. And for them, we were the first big event for a lot of people to be hosted online as a big conference. And I said, if you can help me, then I am available to you. If you need help running your online events, I'm happy to offer you advice. If you can help me now, I'm happy to help you. And again, everyone says yes. No one ever complains about that. In terms of speakers, attracting speakers, depending on which level you're at, some speakers want to know who else is speaking potentially because they want to see what the association is. So you want to think about how you stagger your asks potentially in order to build up to that bigger ask. Speakers promoting on your behalf sometimes works and sometimes doesn't work. It really depends, again, whether speaking at your event is valuable to them and how you make it valuable to them. One of the things is association. So we saw that every speaker at the Impact Summit wanted to tell each other that they were speaking because of the brands that were participating were people like Facebook and Tom's and Headspace. And everyone wanted to say, I'm speaking on the same lineup as these people. And so that incentivizes a kind of almost like a viral sharing. So you've got to think about, it's constantly thinking back is, what am I providing for the person that I'm asking something of? And that's what events really are, is you're just curating other people to provide value to your audience. And so you need to think about how do you provide them useful value as well. In terms of finding speakers, well, that's easy because everyone in the world's on LinkedIn and you can find them. You know, just search for them, find them. And then there's lots of plugins that allow you to find people's email addresses if you need to contact them. If you're contacting people, again, it's the approach of, this is what I'm trying to achieve. If you've got time to chat, sometimes before going straight in with the killer ask. And yeah, you want to buy in their engagement.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. That leads on quite nicely. We spoke just before this call about like how to build a meaningful network, and I guess the difference between network and community. And it probably it falls in quite nicely into most businesses or organizations are quite niche and might have a niche audience, and really about focusing in on that audience and how you have a dialogue with that audience specifically. Bruce, can you just chat us through your kind of thoughts around building a meaningful network and what network versus community means to you?
Sure. So Just getting up this link for this email thing. So for me, network and community are slightly different. So a network is what is my personal network, which is big and broad. It's far-reaching, and it's a various of encounters. It could be people who I've known for a long time, or people who I've met on a kind of short-term basis. But I feel comfortable with being able to reach out to them for something. Community for me is almost like a group of people that are together because of a common purpose. And so people are gathered together for a common reason, and they then participate for some type of common goal. They might all be approaching that in various different ways, but there's a common goal in mind. That for me is what forms community. And once you have that, then you tend to have a much more forgiving group of people as well, who are willing to work in collaboration towards achieving a goal. So FutureX Plus for us is not a network as much as it is a community, and they are participating actively in sharing ideas for how the community gets better. So someone's saying to me, you know, actually, maybe what's your roadmap for the next 2 months for FutureX Plus? Because I'd love to provide my insight. And I would say that's the difference between a community of people all want to support each other intrinsically. That's the aim. And you nurture that much more as how do you give first before you take. A network for me is like the big broad space that I can draw upon for different things, and I'll equally do favors for that broader network, and that takes a long time to build up. My approach, and I have no idea whether this is the right approach, the wrong approach, whatever, but I got started doing this when I was like 18 and 19, so I really wasn't aware of any rules at the time, and if there was any. But you know, my approach was just to reach out to everybody. I reached out to everyone I could think of, and I just asked them all for help, you know, and that was it. I just constantly asked for help, and I tried very hard never to try and develop an overinflated ego. You just stay humble. You just try to stay doing what you're doing. You ask people genuinely for help because you don't know, and so you need people to help you. And in return, you need to be humble and equally offer help where you possibly can. I think that, you know, that's how I approach building networks. You know, for me, when people have said, you know, how did you get started hosting events in different cities where you had no network? Well, what I would do is I would go on LinkedIn and I would search for the group of people that I'm looking for in a certain city, and I would just connect with loads of them. And then I would start producing content that was relevant to them in that area. So not directly messaging them as a first step, but letting them become part of our network and then posting content that is relevant to that network. And then that builds trust. And then eventually you can reach out to people and say, we've been connected for a few weeks, or we've been connected on LinkedIn. They might have already noticed some of your posts by that point. But this idea of connect and send message, I think we all have had that experience on things like LinkedIn, and or you connect with someone and then a minute later you've got an email from them, and it's a sales email rather than a personal email. I think to draw back, and everything that's been successful in my experience has been led with a personal message, not a heavily business message, a personal message that resonates with me and resonates with them, the human being I'm speaking to. Because job titles are just, you know, facades we put up in front of us. We're all just people, you know, and we're all motivated primarily by the same human motivators.
Love it. I love it. We spoke about personal brand in a previous webinar, and I think it's just so important. I think we forget that through a business or event transaction, actually, where the other person we're engaging with is a human. And I think when you communicate your values clearly and your objectives clearly, it's a lot easier for people to be drawn to you or to understand what you're looking to achieve. So absolutely. I think I wanted to spend the last kind of 5 minutes before we move on to questions speaking about LinkedIn. we were meant to have Helen, who is a LinkedIn expert, on the call, but unfortunately she's been held up elsewhere today. There's building work going on at our house. But I wanted to talk about LinkedIn, and Bruce and I can have a conversation, and other people can pitch in. I personally really have been excited about LinkedIn for the past 12 months, I would say. From a technical perspective, the algorithm that LinkedIn is running just now is kind of at a position where Facebook's algorithm was probably in 2013, 2014. So you could actually reach a wider audience with your organic posts. But unfortunately now, Facebook, the way it's evolving is it's a paid platform. So it's very difficult to get your message organically to a wider audience. It's doable, but it's just there's a longer curve to it. But LinkedIn is still in that really exciting organic phase. And I think in terms of platforms, it's a platform where you can get your message relatively easy to your audience compared to other platforms. So we're definitely really excited about it. Can I just ask in the comment, if you could just post in the comment section, just who is actively using LinkedIn on this call? It would be good to understand. Give you a second, or even just a thumbs up. I think we have reactions on this call, so feel free to give us a thumbs up. Okay, cool. So a few people. Bruce, why don't let's have I've got kind of some of the foundations of LinkedIn to run through very quickly, but can you maybe just chat us through in a wee bit more depth how you've used LinkedIn, I guess, for your personal brand and to develop your business and organization?
Sure. So as I say, like so on the kind of LinkedIn profile part, my actual page, it's basically, you know, it's like, it is a CV. It's designed to be as engaging as possible. I hope that when people look at it, they see all the highlights of my career. That's why it's there. You know, it's meant to draw people, and hopefully people are then got enough insight to do research on me, that's the public place where they can do research on me. I mean, I want people to see it. I want people to click the links. I want people to see the recommendations, all that kind of stuff. So I would say, you know, keep it relevant, because no one is not getting Googled now in business, and no one is not getting looked up on LinkedIn. So even if you think that it's not something that happens very often or not in your industry, I disagree. I think everyone's on there. Everyone's researching all of the time. So you want it to be the best version that you can kind of give forward. In terms of like content on there, as you mentioned, Lee, I think that it's a great place for getting, you know, engagement from people. It's the only social network which is about business, really, that I use anyway. You know, Twitter is awash with all sorts of different comments. Facebook is still primarily a place for where I think people are going for personal content rather than business content. Whereas LinkedIn is the place for professionals go to see what's happening. So it's the ideal place for business related content, in my opinion. And also for me, it's a directory of anyone I ever want to speak to ever. And I just have to look them up and find them. I find out information about them, and then I use that plugin that I shared that's called Scrape, and that helps. It's literally a plugin on my Chrome, and I go on their pages, I click Scrape, and their email address pops up. It's not right 100% of the time, but it is most of the time, and that makes it easier to connect with people. I also remember years ago being told what the etiquette of LinkedIn is, and I don't know who came up with the etiquette. I'm not sure it was LinkedIn, because I've read Reid Hoffman's book, Blitzscaling, and I certainly tell you, I don't think that was the intention. To keep it a really secretive, private network is how people would have told me, is that you must know someone before you connect with them. You must send them a deeply personal message. Maybe that's not, I've never done that. For the nearly 10 years I've been doing this, I'd rarely do that unless it's someone who I have a really specific message I want to get across. I connect with people, I accept every single connection, more or less, because I always think to myself, that's just another person that's going to see my content. I want to have connections because it's just a bigger audience for me. And it's a great way to say to people is that we are connected on LinkedIn. We have been for a number of years. And then again, also, if you were building up to reaching out to someone, if you connect with them early on, reference the content they've been posting. You've now got an insight into that person. And so you're able to use what they've said and some of the things that they've shared or the posts that they've liked or engaged with as a reference point for building rapport with them really quite quickly.
Absolutely. And I think in our research, in terms of how LinkedIn have been working really hard on their kind of feed, so their content feed, they've done it. LinkedIn historically have been quite embarrassed about the time that people spend on their platform. They're still quite secretive with the data that they release about their users because ultimately they're a bit embarrassed, and they're working really hard to improve the time that users spend consuming content on LinkedIn. But what I think they've done a really good job is if you look at the LinkedIn feed, it's very similar to Facebook in structure. There's lots of opportunities for people to scroll and consume content from the people that they want to consume it from. And what we're finding is, and actually they released a report a few months ago, this year the time that people are spending on the newsfeed is 40% up from last year. They've not released what that data is, but they have told us that it's more. And I think that's really key. I think there is a transition happening where people are actually, professionals are hanging out on LinkedIn and they're spending more time just scrolling and connecting and consuming content. So I think as it evolves, there's definitely more opportunity for your content to be seen by the right people. No, cool. I think that's really useful. I think Andrew had a question, but I think I might have missed it. I'm just going to have a look. Just skipping back. So Andrew's asked, what is the best time of day to hold a 1-hour webinar? And then which days of the week are better for holding 1-hour webinars? And how much notice should we give? I've noticed he's just left his desk, so we'll maybe give him a second to come back. There he is. Bruce, do you want to answer that question for Andrew?
Sure. So Andrew, we're just about to answer your question. I'm glad we waited until you got back before answering it. So in terms of the best time to hold it, I'm not 100% sure. And we've trialed different times. We've done it at kind of lunchtime for a period because that was when we thought people might have some time. I think with everyone working at home, it's quite tricky because people work on different schedules. Some people have kids, some people have other responsibilities. So lunchtime actually is the time they're looking to really not to be on a webinar potentially. The other time we've got it, thanks Jim. So it's later on in the afternoon or first thing in the morning. So we've got one on Friday with our Plus members and it's like 8:30. And that's actually had the best sign up we've had for a long time. So I don't know for certain, and I don't know, Lee, if you've got any insight on that, but we found early morning actually works quite well.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And particularly in recent times, what we found is like continued series. So if you're building a community in the network, letting the community in the network feed into the time that works for them can be, through feedback, can be quite useful. Yeah. Absolutely. Hopefully that helps, Andrew.
In terms of best days, again, I don't know. Everyone tends to do them on a Thursday, but just at FutureX, we work a 4-day week and Thursdays are our day off. So that's nice for me. But it does tend to be Thursdays is why I see a lot of events happening. In terms of notice, it depends what your objective is. I think if you want lots of people, the more notice, the better, really. But a good couple of weeks. I think works for people, particularly if it's going to be an hour.
Cool, perfect. So in my usual style, I'm very conscious not to eat into people's days. So I think we'll kind of bring the event to a close, and I'll open up to questions if anyone wants to stay on. What I would say is, in the follow-up email, we're going to delve into a little bit more detail about LinkedIn best practices. So that value will be emailed to you later on in the week to make sure that we've covered everything people came on for. But yeah, I think we've got our last episode on Thursday, which is about company culture, and we've got Andrew Dobie from Made Brave, and we've got Kirsty Innes, a marketing and culture consultant, joining us. So Thursday at 10. But just before everyone leaves, Bruce, thank you so much for sharing your expertise.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And yeah, we'll open up to questions. Anyone wants to ask a question, go for it. On you go, Len.
I've not got any questions.
Have you not? I thought you put your hands up. Or are you waving?
I was clapping. I was saying, well done. See? Yay. I've got a couple of tips, but don't know if that's useful.
Go for it.
I went to a philosophy festival online, and what was really cool about that was, well, they tried to do like a Zoom disco at night, which was a bit awkward. Everyone just put their cameras on in their lounges, which you may want to try.
Wow.
The bar is really cheap and there's no queues. So yeah, that was a bit weird. But also it was really cool because you can do Zoom breakout rooms. No, after the event, if you had speakers, what I found was really valuable. Like they had David Nutt talking about the decriminalization of drugs. And like, it was really good because when you had that, they had the chat function at the side, which is really good to interaction, which people normally like wouldn't at events be like, excuse me, can I interrupt you, blah, blah, blah. Well, I might. But then, yeah, afterwards, like you could go to like the tents and then you could basically be in a Zoom where you could just be like, so like David Nutt, like what did you mean by that point? And that was a really added asset for me where you can get you never really run up after a speaker after an event and say, hey. And the other thing was just your LinkedIn tip. Something which I did was get like the CIPR manual and look at like their top 100 lists of people to use business directory like awards, and then like I just like linked in with people who I was like the top of their game and being like, I saw you in the CIPR top 100 influencers this year. That's really awesome. Connect with me. Yeah. So basically headhunted like everyone that's top of their game. So whatever like business you're looking to expand into, what sector, look at the top influencers, and then people love being like, I saw you won a reward. Good for you.
But you know, this is the thing, right? I think that's actually a really good point, is that, you know, things like LinkedIn and social media, it gives us the opportunity to curate a network that we might not otherwise have.
Exactly, right? How else are people going to meet people?
Surround yourself with this digital kind of like list of people who you would love to be part of your network. And then you like their stuff, they might start liking your stuff. You know, at the end of the day, people are people, and actually, you know, people know who's engaged with their posts. Way up to, unless they're a celebrity with millions and millions of people, you know, a lot of very, very successful people know exactly who's liked or retweeted or posted on their thread.
Absolutely.
Cool.
Thank you. Anyone else?
No, just say I've got to go now, but excellent session. Really, really insightful, Bruce and Lee. Thank you very much. And I'll see you next time.
Awesome.
Perfect. Thanks, Neil.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Perfect.
Smashing.